Okay, so I've loaded up Mudbox, and the initial thing you get is a welcome screen with these meshes in there that were preloaded and come with it. So you've got basic head, a bull, car, cube, and a human body. So you can either work with, if you're working on a character, you can start with a head, which you can then add into a body or work with other elements as well. The other thing that's worth looking at is the Mudbox community. That's really worth looking at, and I can get to that from this welcome screen, or I can also look at that within my normal browser up here within the Mudbox software. It gives you some examples of things people have been working on, and also they have a library which is and tutorials which are well worth looking at. So within the library you've got stamps, stencils, and base meshes. I'm going to start by looking at the base meshes, because here there's some stuff that you may find useful. So here's one, there's an ear. That can save you time. I'm going to look at an ear in a minute, but to download them and use them, you can just press this download button here, and it should, if I'm connected to the internet, it should bring that into my 3D view here. And so that's come straight in. I can see through that because it's got backface culling on there probably. And so I could integrate that into my mesh. Ears are quite tricky to do. And that's also going to be available to me from my create menu when I start a new one. So now when I create a new scene, it will give me this dialog box here. You can see I've already downloaded quite a few of these, but if I look through, I've got this ear here that I can click on to start from as well. So again, I'll go back to the Mudbox community again. I think ones definitely worth looking at are the female characters, because it doesn't come with a female base mesh. So you can download, if you are doing a female character, it's worth starting with a female mesh. And there's also quite a lot of clothes in there and different animals that you can look at using as well. So if I wanted to have trousers, I can type in the search engine here for trousers, and it might be American, so I might have to put pants. Yep, there you go. Cargo pants. So again, I can download those, or I could download the long pants. And that again, it will bring it straight into my 3D view and allow me to use that straight away. So I can either compile these together and send them straight into Mudbox, or I can start working with these here. So it's kind of a way of bringing some elements together. Just going to look at boot. So I think there's a cowboy boot and a woman's boot as well. So I can load those in, and I've got one boot there, but I can duplicate that and make two. And you see I'm kind of building up a character without actually even starting on a human body from these elements. This one's got a little trophy by it, so I presume it's been rated by someone. So there, I've got the whole body there in a pose, and I'd need some work to kind of separate the elements within that. But there's a kind of body shape there that I could start working with. And then I've obviously got the head that I can include in that, and I suspect I'll be able to get a. It's going to come down the bottom. So the head comes up very detailed. It's very large. So I'll just undo that, or select it and delete it. I might just select that. Select the object, and I haven't got my full keyboard, but I should be able to delete object by right-clicking it there. So the actual creating a mesh, if I create the human body, I'll probably find that fits this quite well. So what's happening there as well is that each time I'm adding in a model, I'm bringing in lights with that. So on the right here, I have a list of the layers that I'm using, or the object list, and I can see each time I'm making one of these characters, I'm adding in light. So if I start turning those off, it should actually make the scene a bit more viewable. I might even try and delete those because it's just kind of flooding the scene with light, and so that hiding it didn't actually work. So I'm just actually right-clicking it to press delete. So That's why it's coming out so bright. I've got one light in there now, which is the directional light. And so that's coming together with this character here. And you can see it's kind of nearly a full character already. So one thing I can do, and I was looking at with some people, is that if I'm working with these characters, I don't need to have the body underneath the clothing. So if I'm working with this clothing, I don't need to have the body under there. And in fact, at some points, it's a disadvantage to have that under the clothing because it might show through. So you might move the character in some way and the body would show through the clothing. So what I can do, I could select this character here, and you see it's already showing through in these parts. So just to fix that, I may be able to, I'll just save this scene as I go. So save scene as Mudbox demo. And I'll just make a folder on my desktop there. And save that in there. So if I can send to Maya, send selected as a new scene, that will send this character over to Maya. I'll send the base meshes because I haven't actually started working on this yet. So that should, in a moment, bring that into Maya. I don't know if I've got that hidden. Sometimes that takes a little while. Right, it's got there eventually. So, trying to open that again, don't save, open that again. So once it comes into here, I'm just getting the feet. So I press A on the keyboard to get the whole object. And what I'm going to do is just delete some of these features by going into faces mode. And what I can do, I can select an edge loop of these by selecting one face and then shift clicking the ones next to it. So I actually press that there, and I don't know if you can see that. If you press F, I can zoom in, and you see that ring there has been selected, and I can delete that. So this way I can just select certain elements that I need, like the hand, and perhaps if I was working with this within Maya, I can also double click the waistband there, and this will allow me to separate this into separate objects, separate pieces. So I'll do the other arm as well. So clicking one face and double clicking the one next to it. I'll just remind myself what I'm doing there. I'm holding down Shift and double clicking to get that to turn into different sections. So again, I can do the feet and see if that worked. I was getting a bit closer, and delete those as well. So this is really allowing me to just have access to each bit individually, and that's a real bonus when you're working with certain elements. So these I could possibly turn into trousers on there. And the tricky bit to separate is really the head. So what happens here is the edge loops actually go up and around the body. So you can see that one there around the neck. It's going across the bridge of the nose, so that's actually not going to work. And down here, you've got these kind of edge loops going right round the chest. So this is something that you would have to actually do a bit more manually and look at sort of more individually how that's going to work, because these edge loops are a little bit more odd. But I can select certain areas. So within this neck, I'm just taking this point here, and if I shift click and select that row, I can just delete those out. So I'm being a bit more careful about this, and really just kind of selecting a row of these to take these out. So you can obviously use the main head within Mudbox if you need to do a head, and you probably want to come a bit lower so you've got the neck. The neck's showing a bit as well, so I've probably gone a bit high on this compared to what I should do normally. So I'll just carry on doing this just to finish us off to this point over here, and then delete that. So that is actually separated from the other parts of the body. So now, we've looked at combining bodies before, But this method here allows us also, the same method will allow us to separate them as well. So I'm saying mesh, separate, and this will actually create this object into individual parts. So I can see that this is made human body, and I have the separate surfaces within that as well. So that's one technique of making that work. And what's a good thing you can do is using the Sculpt Tools within Maya, you may want to actually look at changing some of this already. So within Maya you have Mesh Sculpt Geometry Tool, which is nowhere near as powerful as Mudbox, but there's a few things that are worth looking at with that. So I'm just going to bring that up. I've turned it on, I've selected the tool, but if I double click the icon here, it should give me the options for that. And you have push, pull, smooth, and the other options, and pinch and erase within that as well. So it's very similar to how Mudbox works. And if I have these trousers here, this is part of the body, the legs, I should be able to flood this. If I press flood, you can see it's applying it to the whole piece. So that's actually making a negative impact on it. If I make it expand out, I can flood it to be larger, which will allow me to kind of get I wouldn't do it too many times, but it allows you to create something that will go over the top of a character. So this would be like, you can send this back to Mudbox as and sculpt that into a character's trousers. So again, I can go to Mesh, Sculpt Geometry Tool, and if I want to make that into a sort of jumper-like shape, I can do that already. So that kind of allows me to work with that within Maya and then use those elements. Let's save the scene first. If I just set that up as in the folder that I was working to. Setting the directory there. Create default workspace, and now I'll give it the name and save that. I should be able to send these hands back into Mudbox and work with those in there. So again, I could send these over, and then I would just be working with the hands, and they would connect into this fairly well. I just want to look at a couple of other things that you may find in the Mudbox community. So for example, if I was working with this basic head, there's a few things you can download from the Mudbox community, which I would suggest. Stamps and stencils are some of the most interesting bits. So I'm going to go to stencils here, and I'm going to just type in ear. So this allows me to find two different ears. One's a basic human ear vector displacement, and one is ear VDM, which basically the vector displacement map is a kind of bitmap, a flat image, but has depth data within it. And I'll show you how these work. So I'll just download that one. I probably have it in my system already, this one. But I'll click on these to download them. And if I go back to my 3D view, I can look at my character here. And so I think that's my ear there. And it brings up an image of the ear in 3D that I can actually just use as a template to put onto my character. So I'm just lining this up at the moment. And then if I use the Sculpt tool, I can make this, I can transfer this shape onto my character. So I'm just going to do it on quite a low strength to start with, just to show you what happens there, and it's sort of low resolution. It's not actually doing much at all. So I'm going to undo that, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it onto a strength of about 200, which is what I'll actually use in the end for this. And you can see it is actually having an impact on the shape, but what I'm not getting is the kind of the detail, and that's because the resolution of my character here is way too low to actually get the detail of this. So within Mudbox, I can press Shift D, which actually gives me a new level. So it comes up here, new level, and tells me how many polygons it's got. So now it's got 8,000 polygons. If I do this again, you can see it's actually got more of a shape of an ear than it did before, but actually still quite low. So I'm going to press Shift D 2 more times, take it to level 3, and then you can see actually that's really shaping up kind of into an ear shape. It's not quite right. If I take that out and have a look, you can see it's a very odd ear shape. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to turn the stencil off. And what I'm going to do is pick from the sculpting tools this Flatten tool here. And one of the problems is that I'm working with a shape of an ear already. So I just want to flatten off this area. I'm just flattening that off. I'm working on a mirroring. So I've got mirroring on the X dimension. So what I do on one side will come out on the other. And I'm just really flattening off that ear shape so I can start from scratch. So I'll just do that reasonably right. It's never going to be perfect. But if I look at the profile now, the ear part has much more of a chance to start from normal. And then I'll go back to my Sculpt tool because that's actually giving the shape. And again, I've got a very high strength on this. And I'm going to select the ear. This is where I actually have to turn it back around. Now, as well as adjusting the object you're sculpting, you can also adjust this this template. If I hold down S on the keyboard and use the right mouse button, I can scale that up and down. Similarly, the middle mouse button will move it along, and the left one will rotate it slightly. So you've got options of working it in a couple of different ways there. And I'm just going to place it over the top of where the ear would have been. And again, using the Sculpt tool, I'm just going to hold that down and push that over the top. And that really should, I'm actually overdoing it there. I think the strength is a little bit too high. But it's coming out is a lot better than it was. And with a bit of tweaking, I should be able to get that quite good. I have had it a lot better than that before. So I will just try lining it up. Maybe it's the angle that the character's at. And also I'll try just bringing the strength down a bit of the tool and just see how that affects it. So that is actually making it a little bit smaller. And really just sort of getting that in. And that's quite a lot better. So I'll just turn that stamp off. So it's probably a little bit small, the ears, I'm not sure about that, but you're kind of building this up already. So there's kind of a good start on that you're working to. There's also some other things I've downloaded, one of which was eyelashes. So I can have a look at that. And again, I have to be very careful with this because I've set the strength of the sculpting tool to be very high. So if I line that up with my eyebrows in there and press it to go, it's going to have huge eyebrows and look very odd. So again, I have to go back to my Sculpt tool and actually just make that quite a subtle look. So I'm just going to put that onto 12, and that is too much. But and I can also, if I did want to extend it slightly, I can actually bring that over and I could actually just add a bit more on the end. And that might actually allow me to, if I hold down B as well, I can shrink that down and just add a little touch in there if I wanted to. And then because it's too big, I can obviously go back and change the settings of that again, but I've also got within here a smooth tool, which is one of the most useful tools within the system. And again, I'll turn the stencil off, make the brush a bit bigger. I'm doing that by holding down B and moving the mouse forwards or backwards. You can also do that by double clicking the tool and changing the size within the parameters here. But by smoothing it, I can come in and just really relax that area. I may want to change the strength of that a bit. And it just kind of pushes that right back. So if you've done something that you want to kind of get rid of, or it looks a bit spiky, you can just take that back within there, and that may be a way of working. So similarly, you may want to build up other areas. There are some vector displacement maps for noses, but it may be that you just really need to add a little bit onto this nose that you have already, just to kind of shape it up a bit. Again, that's actually too much. So I'd either undo that, I'd probably undo that and start again, but you can also go into the smooth tool and really just smooth that off, and that will actually just take that what you've done right back down and really kind of just smooth that off and make it just integrate that in. And that may be the kind of starting point you want, which would actually be fairly realistic for a character, and then you may want to add stuff on. I'll show you grab. So grab, you can move things around a bit. So that's probably more useful on something like the ear. If the ear was like sticking out too much, or you wanted to pull it back slightly, you could probably grab it and move it like that. So you can actually bring it back more towards the head if you wanted to. Similarly, this inside bit here, you may just push that in slightly. You're grabbing an area which is the size of your brush. Flatten we've looked at. Now foamy, which I think is a bit similar to wax within here, you add quite a lot to it. So if you really wanted to have more onto the nose, it kind of just fills it out quite a lot in quite a useful way. And you may want to do that on the cheekbones as well. I'm obviously doing quite a strong movement there. But that's something again that you would combine with the smooth tool and just kind of smooth that off, and you're getting that kind of that look. And you're saying, well, I want to kind of just flatten off the face within here. So just to flatten off the front of the face. And then go to the smooth tool, and really I want quite a strong smooth for that, because it's such a deforming movement that I've done already, and I'm just going to keep rubbing that until it's actually allowing me to have that shape. And combined with the flattening, I can actually get that to become a lot more like the shape that I'm looking for within this. So I can flatten off that side there if I want to kind of just bring that right down and level these off. So I can flatten that out to there. And that's really going to shape it up quite a lot. And I'll just take this last bit over here. And again, smoothing is the real key to kind of making this kind of work out well. So you need to do quite a lot of smoothing. And that's actually where the Wacom tablet is really useful. You can use the sensitivity on that. And again, flatten the nose off if you wanted that there. So you're really working on that shape and building up a character's shape there as well. So that's the basics of modelling within this. So hopefully that's given you a few ideas about different ways of working with these characters and taking certain parts, like taking hands and taking kind of body parts away, and really working with those. So it's worth exploring and worth having a look at different techniques within that.